All right, should be about ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, good evening and welcome to the meeting of the mayor and the council of Princeton. It's December 21st, 2021, and we'll start with our meeting statement.
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulation governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Perrone-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Fraga?
Here.
Mr. Williamson?
Here.
Ms. Sachs?
Yep, here.
Mayor Frida?
Here. Thank you. All right, we have 3 sets of minutes to approve, October 11th, October 14th, and October 19th, all of this year. Eve, moving all 3?
Move the minutes, yes.
Thank you very much. Moving all 3, is there a second? David, thank you for seconding that. Okay, all in favor of approving those 3 sets of minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And I'm abstaining because I wasn't present to the October 14th meeting, I believe.
Okay, so aye on the 2 and
Yes.
abstain on the 14th. Okay. All good on that one, Dolores? I can move ahead. Do you got that?
Yes, I got it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have public comments for items not on the agenda. So anyone from the public that wants to talk about something that's not on the agenda, just raise your hand and you have 3 minutes. Just say your name and address and then bring up your topic. And just so we don't forget, I know we also have an email, which I will find here in a second to read also. Anyone from the public want to make a comment for anything not on the agenda? Okay. Sorry, I got to find that email. All right, not seeing anyone. Let me read the email regarding cannabis dispensaries in Princeton. John Hillner, House Circle. Dear Mayor and Council, I am sorry that I could not attend this evening, but my family has begun to arrive for our Christmas celebration. As a 23-year resident of Princeton, I strongly favor 1 to 3 cannabis dispensaries in our town. I do not know the best number. That is for the Cannabis Task Force to recommend and council to decide. I certainly agree, and it's encoded in our new New Jersey state law on this subject, that our dispensaries should not sell cannabis to anyone under 21 years of age. However, complete prohibition of dispensaries in Princeton won't work and is counterproductive. Witness alcohol prohibition in the early 20th century. How well did that work out? Plus, it's a well-known fact that Princeton middle and high school age children already have access to marijuana of unknown quality, purchased on the street or from friends in the schoolyard. I think the distance of dispensaries from school buildings should be governed by a number of factors, including the safety of our children, as well as reasonable convenience for those who wish to purchase marijuana and do not own automobiles. Is 1,000-foot minimum from schools an absolute requirement in all cases? Perhaps, but not necessarily. I think it depends on where in our small town we are talking about. Finally, I am a senior citizen who had been very active in competitive sports and home yard work into my early 70s. Unfortunately, while these were good for me in many ways, I have had spine issues for the last 8 years. I tried everything for relief, including major spine surgery 7 years ago. That provided relief from the worst pain, but in the last year, other symptoms have crept back. In the last 6 months, I've consulted with numerous doctors and pain management specialists once again. They recommend that I try cannabis. In my earlier years, I must admit that I had a bit of marijuana a few times. And no, I did not inhale. Well, not much. And I enjoyed it. So for both medical and recreational purposes, I would like to try high quality marijuana. I don't want to be driving all over the state to purchase it, nor do I want to obtain unknown quality product by mail order. I would like a local dispensary whose owners I can get to know and trust, and who have demonstrated knowledge of this product, which for too long has been stigmatized and sold in the shadows, and for which far too many people have had their lives ruined by incarceration for being in a practice that has been with us for centuries, if not millennia. Thank you. Okay, that's a letter from John. All right, I see, Adam, I think we have one hand up now.
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Youngling.
Thank you. Hi, if you could just say your name and address and then make your comment. Youngling, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So I'm calling to follow up on our last conversation concerning the Landwind parcel.
Yeah,
I
could you
believe,
just, I'm sorry, just for the record, when we do the minutes, can you just say your name and address so we get it right?
Zhonglian Chen, Macomb Road.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm calling to follow up on our conversation last time concerning the Landwind parcel. I believe Ms. Sachs said the land could not be used for active recreation due to Green Acre funding. She said she was going to look into it to see if she was correct, and I was wondering if she has found the info concerning
Hi,
what she.
Mr. Chen. Yeah, I believe how we left it is that, sorry, I'm not gonna put the cap on you, Bernie, but our administrator, Mr. Vozdovich, was looking into this, and I believe he tried to reach out to you by phone.
Yeah, so let me, I emailed you, sir, on the 14th and the 15th, looking for your phone number to cover any areas you wanted to discuss. To the best of my knowledge, I've not gotten back a phone number for you because your prior emails did not have contact information. But I'm happy to talk to you about it if you want to give me your phone number.
Sure. I'll just email it to you again.
That'd be great.
Or if I could just call your office.
That'd be great as well.
Okay.
609-924-5176.
Okay. All right.
And I have a question for you, Mr. Chen. Are you with one of the soccer associations or a recreational group that uses our fields, or what is your interest in this?
Well, I'm personally affected by the lack of athletic fields in Princeton, because what happened is I live nearby Hilltop Park. So because due to the fact that Princeton lack athletic fields, everything is basically dumped onto Hilltop Park. For example, right now, previously, because they couldn't find an appropriate site, they were going to place the synthetic turf at Hilltop Park. Even though synthetic turf isn't installed in Hilltop Park, we're still bothered by the lighting during the fall season at Hilltop Park. And that is the reason, and the problem is we're constantly buying land, but not using them, not giving the option of using them for active recreation.
Okay, well, just so you know that Princeton taxpayers on several occasions passed a referendum to create an open space tax for the specific purchase of preserving environmentally sensitive land. And that's what the purchase of this was. Had this not been preserved for environmental reasons, it would have been developed into private housing for a developer. So it would not have been an option either way to create recreational opportunities on it. So what it has been preserved from is a private developer creating private housing that would not have been available to the community for community recreational use. But your point is well taken about recreational opportunities. And I think, we have a rec board that is looking into that. And certainly members of council are aware of that. We're starting a master plan process. And
Well, just to let you know, the rec board obviously is very, very unsympathetic to the residents of Hilltop Park. Had they been sympathetic, they would not have decided to place synthetic turf and continue using Hilltop Park as the location for nighttime activities. We're literally having lights shine into the windows of our houses for twice a week for 2 months, almost close to 3 months straight. And it's just a problem. And one of the issue is.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I thought.
Yeah, this is very helpful because this actually is a whole other, sometimes it's helpful to be direct in what it is that your concern is. And we certainly have had a lot of interaction with the Hilltop folks. And the reason why I think that field, the turf didn't go in there was out of sensitivity to, and the concerns of residents like you who didn't want more disruption. So it's very helpful to know that that's your concern.
Well, my concern is Hilltop Park and also the lack of recreation space. I mean, I have sympathy for the sporting organization about using space. It's just that Hilltop Park is not the appropriate location.
Got it.
And when I see these land constantly be purchased and then being deeded out of active recreation, then I know where there's definitely a vocal faction within Princeton that want to urbanize Princeton. I really don't have an opinion about that. But what I do know is that when we have more people moving in, we're going to need more open green space. I love the hiking space. I love the natural preserve where you can go hiking, but that's really not what we do need it, but we also need open space. When you purchase another piece of land and you lock it out for active recreation, not only Hilltop Park is going to be affected, but the future residents moving into Princeton will be affected.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. So we've kind of gone over the time limit just a bit, but Eve, do you want to make your comment and then we'll move along?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted, I'm not sure if it was Mia or myself who said what was said about a Green Acre space, and I believe that was incorrect. So I just wanted to, apologize for giving you incorrect information. And I think the administrator can go over this with you, but this, the Lanwin purchase is, on very steep hillsides. And one of the reasons it's so environmentally sensitive, it's not, an area that could easily be used for open recreation. I believe that Green Acres funds can be used to acquire recreational facilities depending on how they are developed. So it's a little more complicated than I had thought. But anyway, I agree with Councilwoman Sachs. It's good to know your concerns, and there is definitely, a need for, for additional resources for organized sports. And, I hear what you're saying. So thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Appreciate your time. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a comment for something not on the agenda?
Not seeing any, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right. We'll close that portion of the meeting. And we have announcements and reports. Council members announcement. Leticia seemed to be quickest, and then Eve right after that.
Okay. Mine will be quick, I promise. So on behalf of Human Services, who just this week finished distributing the gifts for the holiday gift drive, I wanted to report that they this year They were able to provide gifts for 349 children, and also for their families who received grocery store cards. We want to thank all the donors who sponsored the children and the families, and also that would include our Princeton Police Department who assisted with the drive. The Human Services Department is also in the process of actively assisting families who were during COVID initially were not eligible for COVID relief funds, but now there's a New Jerseyans excluded New Jerseyans fund that Human Services is actively assisting families navigate the application process. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia. Edith?
Thanks, Mayor. I have a few things. First, we just set today a meeting to hear from the public on the issue of whether to zone for cannabis dispensaries in Princeton. That meeting will be on Tuesday, January 18th at 7 p.m. Thanks to all who have engaged so far in this topic. We continue to welcome your input. From the Library Board of Trustees. The Friends of the Library, after 50 years as an independent nonprofit, will be merging with the Library Foundation and will cease to exist as an independent entity. The new merged organization will be known as the Princeton Public Library Friends and Foundation, and will have its first meeting next month. The Friends will be recognized by council for their decades of hard work and enormous contribution to the library and the community that same month. One of the Friends' last acts before dissolving itself was to make a late in the year gift to the public library, made possible by better than expected income from the annual book sale. The Library Board of Trustees, in response to studies showing the disparate impact on low-income library users and users of color, will use this additional funding to abolish fines and late fees for all children's materials. A number of other libraries, including the New York Public Library, have taken this step in furtherance of the goal of equity, and the Princeton Public Library is proud to take this step too. The Sustainable Landscaping Initiative. The new regulations for the Sustainable Landscaping Initiative can be downloaded from the municipal website. There's a convenient English and Spanish single-page document, so residents can use that, and if needed, share. If they hire a landscaping company and landscapers speak only Spanish, then that can be shared with them in that form. The new regulations went into effect on December 16th, and the municipality is engaged in an active effort to get the word out to landscapers, large property owners, schools, and other institutions, also actively seeking to hire a compliance officer to educate the public about this and other important municipal ordinances. I'd like to thank Deputy Administrator Deanna Stockton, Arborist Taylor Sapruta, Access Princeton Manager Christina Rothman-Iliff, and Christine Symington of Sustainable Princeton for getting all the mechanisms up and running that are behind the scenes in order to get all of this in place. Then I have a little piece of good news and a little piece of bad news. So good news, Quaker Bridge Road, which has been closed since Hurricane Ida hit us, is going to open on Thursday. Councilman Cohen described it as just in time to get caught in traffic to do your last minute Christmas shopping. But anyway, so that's and again, a real shout out to our engineering staff, to Deanna Stockton, to Jim Purcell and other staff members who work tirelessly with many other entities. I think there are 5 different state and local and county agencies to make this happen and to get the road open again. And finally, on this sad news, the smart card reader in the municipal garage has finally breathed its last. And so that means you will no longer be able to use your smart card in the garage. We tried very hard to keep it going as long as we could, but technological obsolescence and old age finally triumphed. So that's my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I just want to give a brief report. People may recall that about a month ago, I had reported on and asked for council support. There's an organization lobbying DOT to get a meeting with the commissioner to advocate for an overpass over Route 295, which would connect the, I guess, northern and southern or eastern and western portions of the Johnson Trolley Trail. And then that sort of fell off the agenda because they received a response from the DOT essentially denying the opportunity for a meeting. But in the interim, they have gotten a meeting with the commissioner. So I would like to bring a letter for council's support. And the meeting that they've scheduled is on January 5th. So while I know it's not an ordinary type of business that we would handle at our end of the year meeting on December 30th, without objection from other members of council, I'd like to be able to bring that to that meeting. It should be pretty much matter of course.
Okay. David, thanks for catching that, bringing that up. Okay, other members of council, any announcements or reports? Okay, we have a affordable housing update, PowerPoint presentation that I believe Mr. Van Heijs and Councilwoman Sachs will help us with. I believe it is an update, even though it appears to be 21 slides, so it's quite an update, but we will move through it in a timely manner, but there's a lot there. So please, whoever's going to kick us off.
So I'll start. I just want to say that this, even though it's that many slides, we're not going to read every slide. We just want to make sure that all the information is there for the public. And also, I want to just remind everybody that even though this is a lot of legalese and legislation and a lot of stuff that looks very dry and boring, all of this represents new homes for families who will be able to move to Princeton and benefit from what our town has to offer. And that's what's really special about this. And so this is Councilman Cohen and Councilwoman Lambros and Attorney Van Heijs and I have been busy in the past 2 years, but this really represents a foundation that the previous council put together. And Kevin is just going to give a little bit of a background in terms of how we got to where we are, because I find that we receive a lot of questions about that. So go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Let me see, I can share my screen here. Let's see if this works.
Yeah, it came up.
Okay, that came up. All right, good. Yes, I appreciate the opportunity. We thought it was a good time with the end of the year to just kind of provide a brief update. One of the reasons that it's 21 slides long is the fact that council, and in particular, the Affordable Housing and Redevelopment Committee, has been working almost on a daily basis for about 2 years now to kind of effectuate all of the development opportunities that council has committed itself to by virtue of the settlement agreement. So very quickly, this portion of the process started back in 2015 with the Supreme Court's decision to find that COA, the administrative agency, was essentially non-functional and returned affordable housing compliance basically to the courts. And in accordance with what they call the Mount Laurel 4 decision in 2015, Princeton moved forward and filed a declaratory judgment action with the court. The Supreme Court had envisioned this process would take approximately 6 months. And unfortunately, it has now been over 6, pushing 7 years now. But there was ultimately a trial that spanned the first half of 2017, which culminated in Judge Jacobson's decision in 2018, which established the methodology that municipalities would be able to calculate and ultimately be approved by the court to figure out what the affordable housing obligations were for each municipality. Princeton had essentially three components of its affordable housing obligation. We had a present need rehabilitation share of 80. We had a prior round obligation of 641 and a third round obligation of 753. Of course, we've discussed this quite frequently and throughout the public during the time frame. We moved very aggressively on meeting those obligations once the court found what they were. The prior round obligations had been satisfied and addressed. Obviously, with the merger of the borough and the township, we actually had two components of our prior round obligation. It was unique to the state. The township had fully fulfilled its obligation by the production of units and credits. And the borough, because of the inability of land and inability of specific sites to redevelop, essentially was able to meet its prior round or second round obligation by producing 100 units. And then they had what they called a vacant land adjustment of 223, which just meant that the borough was unable to actually fulfill its obligation because of the inavailability of land. So that was great that the Princeton was ahead for the prior round obligation. And then third round obligation for about 2 years while the court was figuring out the methodology, council was moving forward and evaluating all aspects of the municipality, and we were able to put a plan together that actually met and exceeded the third round obligation of 753. And we had done that by 244 units that had already been constructed. So even during the whole COA process that didn't work, Princeton was moving ahead with its affordable housing opportunities. We had 4 units that were approved but had not yet been constructed. And then there was a plan put in place for 265 units via municipally sponsored projects, inclusionary projects of 77 with 188 bonus credits that gave the town 778 credits against the 753 obligation. So with that, with the settlement in place, approximately this time in 2019, we proceeded to the fairness hearing in February of 2020, and then ultimately the court's compliance hearing in November of last year. And that was great that the court actually found that the settlement agreement was fair and protected the low and moderate income households that needed affordable housing, and Princeton had a compliant plan that would not only meet but exceed its obligation. And then that was actually, so the first 2-3 years of that, that was all just planning. And that was when we kind of all took a collective sigh when we got through the fairness hearing. That's actually when the real work began. And so we just wanted to lay out kind of some of the efforts so that the public had an opportunity to understand exactly what went into it. Following the fairness hearing, council engaged on a very aggressive course because we had to prepare and adopt the housing element and fair share plan, adopted the spending plan, a marketing plan, all of the affordable housing manuals, appointed the municipal housing liaison, and also our rehabilitation administrator. As part of the compliance mechanisms, we also worked to enact new ordinances to effectuate the production of affordable housing. So we did the general affordable housing ordinance that contained the municipal-wide 20% mandatory set-aside requirement, and also contains all of the administrative type of requirements, how units get produced, how they get phased, income level, bedroom distributions, and those types of things. There are some amendments that are actually scheduled for later on this evening's agenda. So there is an amendment that is currently in process. Council also moved as part of the settlement and enacted overlay ordinances along Nassau Street. And we've essentially the affordable housing overlays, or the AHO 1, 2, and 3 zones. And this evening, as well as also an amendment to the AHO 1 overlay to actually add an additional property to that to expand the opportunities in one of the central corridors of the town. Council also moved to enact what they call the Northern S2 zoning ordinance, and that was to provide for mixed use opportunities with commercial and residential in the northern portion of the town, up along 206, pushing towards the Montgomery border. And then those were actually some of the easy ones because they were more planning types of things. And then we were also moving, and this year in particular have moved, like I said, almost on a daily basis on trying to bring several projects to fruition. So we just wanted to kind of lay those out for you as well.
Kevin, you're doing such a great job. I'm going to let you keep going, and I think you can do a better job of summarizing just the legal background, just briefly of what we've done with each one, and then I'll just chime in with what the expected occupancy is, and how many units there will be. So if you could just,
Okay.
I think you can
Very
do a
good.
better job than I can of summarizing. I also can't read it on my screen. Right now.
Happy to do so, and we'll move fast. And again, I know there's been so many of our projects, as we were putting this presentation together, so many of our projects have actually been through the planning board. So I know that the public is aware of them, but we wanted to just highlight them here. One of the first projects that was able to move forward because the developer actually approached the town prior to the methodology trial was the RPM development at Herrontown Road. And this is the old SAVE site. This is a municipally sponsored project. So as part of our requirements, council moved forward to put these necessary zoning that was in place, or put the necessary zoning in place to facilitate the project. Entered into the affordable housing agreement and a pilot agreement, which were required as part of the tax credit financing that RPM was applying for. We adopted the resolution of need. RPM was able to engineer the plans, worked with the neighbors, and ultimately applied for and received from the planning board approvals for this project back in 2019. And then there was a challenge to both the approvals and ultimately the rezoning as well. And that litigation just ended with the appellate division decision on November 3rd of this year, upholding council's actions. And previously the board's actions had been upheld. So this project is now fully approved. It's funded, and they are essentially finalizing all of their requirements so that they can actually proceed to closing of their financing, and then they will be able to begin construction.
And there will be 64 affordable units, and that's 100% of affordable. And the initial occupancy is expected in the third quarter of 2023, with full occupancy anticipated in the fourth quarter of 2023. And I think what's particularly exciting about this site and some of the other sites are the sustainability options that we've negotiated. David, do you want to just chime in with what RPM is doing with sustainability? I think it's fully electrified.
Yeah, I believe fully electrified, except for the ranges, the cooking ranges and the kitchens, which apparently residents really prefer gas. So we'll hear that on other projects as well. But it's also intended to be net zero ready, which is standard, a federal standard that's based on, it's basically an enhanced version of I'm sorry, I'm blanking out on the program, but it's net zero energy basically means that once renewable energy generation is put in place with solar panels on the roofs, that the project should be using no more energy than it's able to produce.
Great. The next project that we're able to move forward with was the Princeton Community Village project. This is also another municipally sponsored. and there was the addition of units within the existing development. So as part of the settlement, council moved forward. We adopted the necessary overlay and zoning ordinances for that, entered into the affordable housing agreement and pilot agreement, again required for the financing through HMFA, adopted the resolution of need, and PCH was ultimately able to apply for and obtain planning board approval earlier this year in the spring, and actually just held their groundbreaking for this project in October. And so they are essentially proceeding with construction of this project.
And that is 25 100% affordable units at Princeton Community Village, and they are expecting initial occupancy again in between the third and fourth quarters of 2023.
Next project that we had on the list was Franklin Avenue and Maple Terrace. This is essentially a project that is being worked on with both the town, the Housing Authority, and Community Investment Strategies. And this is one that's in the works right now, as everything has been proceeding on everything else. What we did was we did put the necessary ordinance and overlay ordinance in place, and council had convened a task force last year. That presentation was made over the summer for the design criteria or the design guidelines that will ultimately make it into the criteria for the project. But this project is going to be the focus of council as we go into the new year.
And I'll leave it at that.
Very good. Then we had two projects up on Fanat Road that were part of not only our settlement, but also we had a separate MOU with Avalon Bay Development that ultimately acquired the properties known as 100 and 101 Fanat Road. So as part of the initial settlement agreement and MOU, we were able to actually work on some development parameters. And then we actually proceeded with adopting the necessary ordinances that would actually provide for essentially two components. There would be an inclusionary market affordable and market rate apartment complex, and also a senior project. As we were working with the developers of those, we realized that the redevelopment process would actually be a better way to effectuate this project and actually allow for greater flexibility and options, and also help with some of the funding through the state and other entities. So council moved ahead and actually initiated back in 2019 a study to determine whether or not the site would actually qualify as an area in need of redevelopment, specifically a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment. The planning board actually conducted the study, conducted a hearing, found that the site did qualify, and recommended that it be designated, which council did do. And then we were able to proceed with the creation of the Fanat area redevelopment plan, which actually had two components. The first was for Avalon Bay itself, and this is the market plus affordable housing component. So as part of that, as indicated, we entered into the MOU back in 2019. And then with the designation of the site as an area in need of redevelopment, actually designated Avalon Bay as the redeveloper for the site, entered into the necessary pilot agreement, redevelopment agreement, and Avalon Bay was ultimately able to obtain the approval for its development this time last year. And they actually just went to closing at the end of October and are now the owners of the site, and have actually already started the preliminary site work pursuant to their planning board approvals.
Kevin, do you want to just describe? Yeah, great. Just describe the Pearl, and then I'll talk about both of them together.
Perfect. The other component of it was actually a unique settlement. So this project actually had two components. Avalon Bay was acquiring the entire parcel, but as part of the settlement, carved off a portion of the property, and so that we could create a senior development. Pearl Developers was actually they're specialists in this, so they were actually able to proceed with a plan for this. As part of that, we entered into an affordable housing agreement with Pearl with the designation of the site, also did the designation of them as the redevelopers, entered into the necessary pilot agreement, redevelopment agreement, resolution of need. That enabled them to proceed with funding opportunities for this. They were also able to engineer the site, applied for and obtained planning board approval in December of last year. There is a municipal, because this is a 100% project that's being municipally sponsored, there was a municipal funding commitment to this project that was approved back in October. And last Thursday, Lara Schwager of Pearl actually advised us that they actually closed on their financing. And they are actually getting ready to line everything up and begin construction contemporaneous with Avalon Bay as well.
And I think we also got some very good news, Kevin, about the financing of Pearl. Did you want to mention that?
I forgot to bring out the actual numbers. And David or
David, do you
may
remember?
know better, but yeah.
I mean, it's my recollection. I think this is the final number he landed on, but the original commitment was for 8 million of municipal support. And I believe it ended up around 6.5 million because of advantageous funding they were able to get.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well, which is great.
Yep.
Great news.
And I, for some reason, thought it was even lower, and I think it might be, but let's hope. And so the interesting thing about the Fanat property that I think a lot of people don't understand is that it's really one unit. And so the Pearl, which has 80 units of senior only housing, and then the Avalon, which has 210 market rate apartments and townhouses, 5 adult special needs units, and 6 affordable family units. Altogether, the affordable housing set aside on this ratio is actually about 34.5%, which is really quite excellent. And I think people tend to think of the project separately, but it really makes more sense to think of them as a whole. And the funding, the pilot from the Avalon project is going to finance the construction of the Pearl project, so that even though it's a municipally sponsored project, it will be covered entirely by the pilot from the Avalon project with some left over. So it's a very creative financing mechanism that benefits the town and results in a significantly in a quite a high affordable housing ratio on that site.
The next one is the North Harrison Street redevelopment area. And this actually has several components. So again, with the success and the essentially toolkit that the redevelopment law provides, council initiated a study of the area essentially from Clearview through Princeton Shopping Center and up to Terrace Road, that's outlined in red on the photograph. But again, and very similar to what was done with Fanat, did a resolution requesting that the planning board undertake a study of the area and the lots that are in there. The planning board did do that study, held a hearing, and again, ultimately found that the sites that were included in the area did qualify for redevelopment designation, and council did move forward with that in April of this year. There are a couple different components to that. And the first is the Princeton Shopping Center one. It was originally an MOU with Edens. Edens subsequently entered into an agreement with Avalon Bay to actually develop the residential portion of the site. And that's where the existing pharmacy is now. So pursuant to that concept, and this again was also a separate agreement that was worked on contemporaneous with the Avalon Bay Fanat settlement and the affordable housing settlement with Fair Share. So there was a concept plan that was worked on at the time that essentially provided the starting point for what we were doing here. And so Council moved forward last year, adopted the necessary overlay ordinance that would facilitate the residential component, adopted amendments that became necessary with this to the shopping center and AH05 ordinances. There were a couple other subsequent ordinance amendments that needed to get done because we found out later on that the purchaser to the north actually had an option that dated back several years that we were not aware of. So we made some necessary ordinance changes to make sure that nothing ultimately ended up non-conforming. Council then moved forward with designating Avalon Bay as the redeveloper for the residential portion of this project. Also adopted a redevelopment plan for that that came out of the original concept plan. Have also been initiating discussions now with Edens to start looking forward. And again, a topic for next year, but looking forward to how this can be a springboard for the redevelopment of the shopping center. And ultimately, Avalon Bay was able to, again, engineer its plans, submit to the planning board, and just received approval earlier this month for the project. So, Mia, do you want to do this, or do we want to just jump to the?
Yeah,
other
no,
components?
I forgot to mention the projected occupancy timeframe for the Avalon Fanat. So let me just mention that now. And that's initial occupancy would be the second quarter of 2023, and the stabilized occupancy would be the projected for the first quarter of 2024. And of course, since it's a primarily market rates, we're looking at stabilized as opposed to full occupancy. And for the shopping center site, that's 160 market rate units and 40 affordable, with initial occupancy this projected for the second quarter of 2024, and leading to stabilized occupancy in the first quarter of 2025. And I think, one reassuring element that for particularly for the schools and others who are concerned about growth, and the reason why I wanted to mention the occupancy timeframe is because you can see that it is actually very balanced over the next few years. There's not any one chunk within, half a year or so. It is really pretty evenly balanced over a number of years. So go ahead.
And I just want to jump in and say I did double check my email, and the municipal contribution on the Pearl project is down to 5.7 million. So Mia was correct. It's lower than I said.
Yay. I love being right and things like that. Okay.
Great. The other project that we have within the redevelopment area is located at Terrace and Harrison. This is being done by Wind Development. This was actually included in our settlement agreement as an inclusionary zoning site. And as council moved forward with the ordinance that provided for the inclusionary component, Wind Development actually reached out to the council and indicated that they were contract purchasers and were very interested in that. And then through essentially a weekly dialogue over the last 12, 15 months or whatever it's been, has really worked on a development that will really enable that comprehensive redevelopment of the north end of that site, and actually doubled the original projections that we had as part of our original settlement agreement. We were very, very conservative in the potential build out of the site, but as the site came in and also had an option to acquire additional lands, it allowed us within the existing development parameters of what we were considering as appropriate density on the site. The additional land area actually gave Wind the ability to actually expand the project scope, and using the redevelopment process also enabled for a significantly better development. So council moved forward with, again, the original inclusionary zoning ordinance back in 2019 as part of the settlement agreement. did the AH05 overlay on that with the redevelopment designation, designated Terhune Development LLC, which is a sister corporation or sister company with Wynn. Did the plan for it, and Wynn actually submitted back in October and are currently undergoing the planning board professional review process right now before they will be scheduled for a hearing after the new year.
And when the Wynn site will have 100 market rate and 25 affordable units, and depending on how things go with the planning board, the initial occupancy would be expected around the third quarter in 2023, with stabilized occupancy in the fourth quarter of 2024. And I also wanted to mention that Councilwoman Lambrose, Councilman Cohen, and I, and Kevin Van Heis have been meeting pretty regularly with the project team on the Wynn site, and we're really excited. Without getting into too much detail, there is they've created an adjacent linear park, which will we're working on the legal framework, but it will be a tremendous community benefit for the town, with all sorts of amenities that I think will, recreational amenities that will be, the town will be very excited about. So just leave it at that. But also from a sustainability perspective, I think this building is going to be fully electrified. There's a green roof, a lot of charging stations. David, do you want to go into more detail about the sustainability stuff? You're muted.
Still
David,
muted.
you're
Yeah, I wanted to just mention it's also net zero ready, which like the other project that I chimed in on, the one on the Save site. Yeah, I think that's the only other thing to really emphasize there. But I also wanted to emphasize one of the things that Kevin was saying in slightly less legalese jargon, that we never did increase the density on this site. The extra units that were realized versus the original projection were all because of the ability, they had the ability to add some property that they purchased from Eden's to up the quantity without increasing the density. So.
Can I interrupt with a quick question? Mia, you've used a term several times that I don't understand. Occupancy, stability, or what? Stable occupancy, something like that.
It's basically when we can expect occupants to start occupying the units, and that would be the initial time for when people will start to come and occupy the units. And then for the market rate units, you would have stabilized occupancy. You wouldn't necessarily have full occupancy. With the affordable,
What does that term mean?
stabilized meaning that it's
it assumes a certain amount of vacancies. No apartment building ever has every single unit filled. There's an assumption of about 5% vacancy. So they call it stabilized instead of full occupancy.
Thank you.
David, that was what I was trying to say. And the, of course, for the 100% affordable, it's anticipated that they would be fully occupied. So.
The last one that we have was also a project that was not in our settlement agreement, but they did appear at our court hearing, and that is the owners of 375 Terhune, right next to the Wynn site and just a little north of the shopping center site. And we were actually able to reach an agreement with them that we ultimately were advised the court of by the time the compliance hearing came around, and there is a concept plan in place for that. So we actually reached the settlement agreement last November, and as part of that, we adopted the necessary AH7 zoning district for that. We are in regular communications with the developer, and their plans are currently being worked on, and they anticipate being able to submit to the planning board shortly. The one thing I'll just highlight on this is that as part of the settlement agreement with the developer, there's actually going to be the construction of a road that you'll see on the bottom of the screen there that will actually link Terhune to the shopping center, which was an important aspect for planning purposes for council, because that road and then the adjacent park that Councilwoman Sachs just mentioned will actually provide both a vehicular and pedestrian interconnectivity through the developments up through Fanat, the existing developments along Terhune, now the wind development, the 375 Terhune development, and ultimately, and hopeful with the soon-to-be revitalization of the shopping center, and then ultimately the Avalon Bay unit. So it was the redevelopment process actually enabled really this interlinking and a really area-wide planning tool to connect these separate developments and do them very comprehensively.
And I guess the occupancy time frame for 375 is TBD, to be determined, because we're not quite sure what their time frame is. But and those are actually will be for sale. These are of the entire settlement. These are townhouses, and they will be for sale. I think we haven't figured out entirely the mechanism whereby that will take place. But if you can see I don't know how you can, it's hard to see, but at any rate, the two units, the two sort of structures in front, those are townhouses that face Terhune, and those will be affordable townhouses for sale.
Yeah, they're actually triplex units, so not exactly townhouses, but they appear as single-family residences to blend in with the character of Terhune.
Good. And there was just a kind of a summary chart at the end, but that's essentially what has occupied council's time over the last 2 years in particular, and certainly this year specifically, bringing all of these projects to fruition. And as I had commented earlier, even in putting this together, we have been so focused on the day-to-day, getting them to this stage, but it's amazing to look at in the span of the last essentially year and a half or so, the projects that under construction, approved. There's a hearing pending for the wind project, and then the two other ones are planned and actually are anticipated to be submitted for approvals next year. So,
and I think when we last saw Judge Jacobson at the compliance hearing, she seemed very skeptical as to whether Princeton could actually pull all this off. So even though she's retiring, I hope we have the chance to say that we did it. So
very good. And that's all I have. I don't know if there are any questions or.
That's a great presentation. Thank you. Eve?
Yeah, I don't have any questions, except thank you for explaining that term, but I just want to express my appreciation, Kevin, to you, and to my colleagues, Mia, David, and Michelle, who have toiled on this. And it is such an incredible benefit for our town, and they have wrested really so many good things out of this that we didn't necessarily know we were going to get to at the beginning, especially given some of the past history with the last Avalon Bay development. And I think we're on a much better, more congenial footing with them and with the other developers. And yet at the same time, the town is reaping incredible benefits from this financially and in terms of community development and community assets. So thank you all so much for, what you've done, as members of council, and Kevin, and, you've done for our town. It's really tremendous, and I think a model to be followed. So
Thank you, Eve.
Thank you very much.
No other questions or comments? Michael?
Just say ditto.
Oh.
Great work. Thank you to my colleagues on council, Kevin, and also for members of the task force. One of the task forces, at least, that I'm aware worked on this. That was a Franklin.
Franklin, yeah.
Yes. Thank you all.
Yep. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly salute the council, the mayor and council over the last couple of years, providing amazing leadership on the implementation of our fair share housing plan. And I also wanted to say that I'm very proud of the planning board, a group of volunteers who has agreed to meet almost weekly at times, certainly in the recent past this year, to accomplish this very ambitious program. So I wanted to thank Chair Wilson, the former Chair Gunning, and all the members of the planning board who have worked tirelessly to help implement this plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mike.
Michael. Okay, Kevin, thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, I'll sign off. Have a great evening and a wonderful holiday all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
too.
you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks.
Okay, we have ordinance public hearings. The first one is ordinance 2021-34, an ordinance amending certain sections as specified below of the Municipality of Princeton Ordinance 2020-15, Affordable Housing Ordinance, to address the requirements of the Fair Housing Act and the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls, UHAC, regarding compliance with the municipality's affordable housing obligations. Is there a motion on that? Thank you, Mia. Is there a second? Thank you, Michelle. Moved and seconded. Questions, comments? Does someone want to just give a brief synopsis of what this does?
We shouldn't have let Kevin go so soon.
Well, Michael's here. Michael can.
Well, I think the presentation we just heard gave a great context for these two ordinances. As you may recall, Kevin mentioning that one of the important components of our fair share housing plan are the overlay zones that we put in, particularly along the Nassau Street corridor. I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. This ordinance is about another very important aspect of our plan, which is that goal of 20% inclusionary housing for projects. And it's really quite a goal that Princeton has accomplished. The planning board heard at its regular meeting on December 9th, reviewed this ordinance and looked at it in terms of consistency with the master plan, and understood that the purpose of this ordinance is to mandate a minimum 20% of affordable housing units in new residential multi-unit projects with more than 5 residential units at a density of 6 or more units per acre. So those are larger projects. It was resolved unanimously by the planning board and determined that this ordinance is very consistent with the goals and objectives of the Princeton master plan, and that the ordinance will result in an increase in both the amount and diversity of affordable housing units throughout Princeton. And also the planning board acknowledged that it's an important component of the 2020 Fair Share Housing Plan. So for those reasons and others, this ordinance was endorsed by the planning board.
Thank you, Michael. David.
Yeah, and I will just quickly mention that one of the key features of the changes to the original ordinance have to do with closing the loophole. People may remember that there was a project that came in with, I think, 8 units that was not required to provide any affordable units based on the original version of this ordinance that was passed back in 2020. And so some of the revisions you would see in this version are there to close that close that gap. There are also some changes in definitions of, really sort of boilerplate type stuff, but things that in the original version were not quite, Fair Share was not quite comfortable with the version that got adopted. So we've changed some of the definitions and things like that. But that issue of closing the loophole was the main substantive change that you'd find in this ordinance.
Thank you, David. Any other council questions or comments before I go to the public? Okay, any public questions or comments? Just raise your hand if you have any. All right. I don't see any hands up. We'll close the public comment portion and go to a roll call vote.
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson, Ms. Sacks.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 2021-39, an ordinance of the Municipality of Princeton, amending the Affordable Housing Overlay 1 or AHO1 zoning district. Is there a motion on this? Thank you, David. Is there a second? Thank you, Eve. Council questions or comments on this? Michael, do you want to jump in and just give a
Brief.
synopsis? Yes.
Sure. This is basically a fine tuning of one of the overlay zones, the AHO1, which is an overlay zone which is found along Nassau Street, east of the center of town. It's also found in towards the center of town as well, but this is a section over by the former grammar school, if you know the historic old Princeton Grammar School, Thomas Sweet, for a more well-known landmark. But anyways, on that block let me see, it's block 4701. We took another look at that area and we thought that to incentivize development that would result in inclusionary affordable housing units, we wanted to make the footprint a little more reasonable and add a lot 27. So this ordinance will do that. It just seemed to make sense to accommodate new development. And the nice thing about the overlay zones is that it also requires, for added density, you also have to preserve existing buildings fronting on the streets and do some other good urban design things. So we're really excited about that. The other part of this draft ordinance is to allow for a slightly taller building in terms of new construction. Originally, it was at 45 feet as a maximum, and now we've lifted it to 50. 5 more feet doesn't sound like a lot, but it'll allow for, we think, a greater flexibility in terms of architectural design. So for those two reasons, sort of adding that additional lot as well as giving slight increase in possible height of new construction, we think will hopefully give an incentive to really a beautiful development on that block.
Thank you, Michael.
We've got
Any other
Kevin back in case there are any questions.
Okay. I think we're good at the moment, but we'll see. Any other council questions or comments before we go to the public? All right, hearing none. Anyone from the public have a question or comment on this ordinance? All right, see no hands up from the public. We'll close the public portion of the hearing and go to a roll call vote. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm good. Sorry.
Okay.
Ms. Peron Lambros,
I was asking for silence in the background. Yes.
Okay.
I voted yes. So.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson, Ms. Sacks,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 2021-40, an ordinance of the mayor and council of Princeton concerning salaries and compensation of certain personnel of the municipality of Princeton. Is there, Leticia has a motion? Is there a second? David has the second. Moved and seconded. Bernie, do you want to tell us briefly what this is?
Mayor, this is, council does this from time to time. Going into a new year, it's typically adjusts the salary ranges. But more importantly here, we've added some positions in the municipality over the last couple months, some grant-funded COVID positions, open space manager, IT director. And what this does, it adds those positions to our, to the salary and wage ordinance.
Thank you very much. Any council questions or comments? Okay, any public question or comments? All right, seeing no public comments, we'll close that portion of the hearing and ask for a roll call vote on this.
Ms. Peron Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson, Ms. Sachs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe there's any other items that Mr. Van Heist has to worry about on the agenda, just so we don't keep him hanging if we don't need to. So we can say, Kevin, we're saying goodbye to you again.
Thank you, Mayor. Yep, I was just getting ready to log off. Thank you. Good night.
Have a great night. Thanks. Okay, resolutions. 21-388, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton approving a home rehabilitation loan to fund a home improvement contract for an affordable housing owner in the amount of $23,150. Is there a motion on the resolution? David, thank you. Sir, Leticia has the second. Questions or comments on the resolution? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everyone. 21-389, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing execution of memorandums of understanding with Princeton Housing Authority and Princeton Community Housing, Inc. in connection with the community Wi-Fi project. Leticia has the motion. Eve has the second. Any questions or comments on this one?
I'm just so glad to see this move
Finally.
forward. It's been, I wish we had been able to do something earlier during, the beginning of COVID, because really in this day and age, to not have access to Wi-Fi is such a, it can be so debilitating. So I'm thrilled that this is going forward for our school kids, our working adults, for our seniors who are going to benefit. So just excited.
Yeah, and I see Maureen Fullaway, one of our staff members, is also in the audience. And Maureen, thank you very much. I know you've been in the middle of a lot of back and forth between a lot of players to keep this moving along. So thank you very much for your help with that. Okay, sorry. Were there any other questions or comments on this? Okay, if not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Let's see here. Resolution 21-390. Resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton awarding agreement to Economic Development Strategist LLC for Phase 3 of consulting services in an amount not to exceed $17,500. Is there, Michelle has the motion. Is there a second? Sorry, Mia has the second. Questions, comments? Michelle, you just want to?
Just a background. This is for the third and final phase of our contract with Stewart Copper Weiss. If you recall, in the beginning, we went in phases to see what would happen, what the recommendations were, and we heard the recommendation from the steering committee to move forward. There's still a lot of work to be done, so this would get us into the phase writing ordinance, doing bylaws, creating a district management corporation, and moving forward. There would be a hearing, two hearings actually, one on the ordinance and one a public hearing on the budget that would be proposed. So just so you know what the background is, and then this would be the final obligation of the municipality to help fund this creation of a special improvement district if it moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. David?
Just to emphasize, this is the study that will help shape exactly what the SID is going to look like. So, we've been receiving a lot of public input in the recent, in the last week or so, expressing some concern about exactly what form it would take. That's what this study is about, figuring that out, right?
Exactly. And that's exactly right. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And now it's the public input process. So we're really just reaching out now to the public so people become aware of it. So there's a lot. There was a stakeholder meeting, but of course not everybody was able to attend. So now this is the next phase.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 21-391, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing agreement to John Hart Farms LLC for 2022 deer processing services not to exceed $20,250. Is there a motion? David, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Michelle. Any questions, comments on this one? Mia?
You know, I had to ask. This means that the deer are being processed to use to send to food for people who who need it, right?
Correct.
It's very, it's very explicit about that. It requires tracking of the amount of meat that's been donated, where it goes, and yeah.
And we know that it is getting where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just a
Michelle?
clarification. My understanding was in the contract, it's an amount not to exceed, but it's $135, I think, per deer that's contributed, which, would go to the food bank. So I think
Correct.
we have a way of accounting for the per deer cost. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right.
Okay. 21-392, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing the execution of a right of entry agreement between the municipality of Princeton, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Division of Parks and Forestry, and the New Jersey Water Supply Authority for access to the Quaker Road embankment for Tropical Storm Ida repairs. Eve, making the motion. Thank you. Is there a second? David has the second. Questions or comments, other than what a great relief it is to be getting all the paperwork and I's dotted and T's. And again, as we said earlier, Deanna, thank you so much for jumping in and quarterbacking an amazing amount of coordination between so many different groups and agencies that it's amazing, crazy that you even volunteered to do that, but great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments from anyone?
I love that the paperwork is just kind of trailing. I mean, the road is opening, barely following the paperwork. So I don't know which is slower, laying down the the actual physical surface or following up on all the paperwork. But
Paperwork.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 21-393, resolution extending temporary use and access agreements with Palmer Square Station LLC. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second? Eve, thank you. Questions or comments?
Just glad to see this moving forward. It's a great project. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 The ayes have it. 21-394, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing participation in the nationwide settlement agreements with Johnson & Johnson, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and Amerisource Bergen to resolve claims involving their roles in the country's opioid crisis. So thank you, Trishka, out there somewhere, for getting all this put together in time for tonight. I think David had his hand up for the motion. Eve's got the second. Trishka, any brief comment or anything on this that you want to toss in there, other than what a great idea to do this?
Just that it's important to maximize the amount of money that can come to the state of New Jersey, and that requires participation, maximum participation by political subdivisions opting into these settlements. So I'm glad Princeton's doing this.
Thank you. Leticia?
I had a question, Trishka, and I'm not sure if it's the same settlement, but I thought I read that a judge had denied the settlement.
That was the Sackler.
Was that a
family
different one?
Settlement with Abbott Pharma. And,
Okay,
yeah,
I just
the-
wanted to confirm that it wasn't the same.
But I was thrilled to read that, and
Okay.
I'm hoping the Sacklers will be held responsible.
Okay, got it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. Thank you. All right, next is the consent agenda, paying of our bills, reappointing municipal clerk, appointing deputy municipal clerk, and approving firefighter membership for Jonathan Lowry. Someone want to, Leticia, move in the consent agenda, Michelle seconds. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Consent agenda is passed. Michelle? You
And
have
I just wanted to thank, we thank a lot of people, but I think sometimes we overlook the people that are behind the scenes and make things happen. So just want to thank the clerk, the deputy clerk, and the whole clerk's office for all the great work that they do, putting all of these agendas together and keeping up on the minutes and everything they do, and all the other work that they do in the office. So thank you.
So noted.
Here, here.
Yeah. Thank you, Dee, and Don, wherever you are.
Yeah, Dolores is there somewhere. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David?
Move to adjourn?
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Michelle and Mia. I was worried. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, everybody have a great night.
Wishing happy holidays to everyone.
Happy
holidays.
holidays, everyone.
Happy New Year.
And happy
Feliz
Okay.
Navidad.
Feliz
Yeah.
Navidad.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa.